Good afternoon and welcome to the Civil Service Commission meeting of May 12th, 2021. Maybe have roll call, please.
Commissioner Storian?
Here.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Here.
Commissioner McCarley?
Present.
Chair Abkarian.
Here. What's next?
For the record, Commissioner Gazarian is absent. Next, we have minutes for the meeting of March 10, 2021.
Move to approve. Second. There's a move to approve in a second. Unanimous approval of the minutes. What's next?
I do believe
Commissioner amendments to it. Go ahead.
I do believe Commissioner Hartunian was absent. Commissioner, would you like to abstain from those minutes?
I thought Mr. Hartunian was.
No. Yeah, I think I chaired that meeting. I think.
Yeah, Mr. Petrosian, he was here at that meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't there. So
for the March 10th meeting or April 14th meeting? Because this is for the March 10th meeting.
Oh, this is for the March 10th meeting. Okay, Mr. McCarty, you want to go ahead and second that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Seconded.
I'll register unanimous consent with abstain from Commissioner Hartunian, and I'll move on to the next minutes for the meeting of April 14, 2021. And this is the one that the Chair Abkarian was absent.
So moved. There's a move, and I think Mr. Hartunian is going to second.
I will second that, yes.
Unanimous consent with no amendments. What's next?
Oral communications. I see one line on hold. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, looks like we have no oral communications at the moment.
No oral communications. What's next?
Next, we have a recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is our monthly recruitment status report for the past month. These are our active recruitment processes listed by title, department, filing period, and the examination dates. For this report, we have 54 recruitment processes, and it's down a bit from last month. I believe we were up around 60. What you see right now is a lot of police and just a variety of other positions spread throughout the organization. Again, it's reflective of the recruitment activity at the present. We are still under somewhat of a hiring freeze, although there are certainly exceptions, and you're seeing most of our public safety positions we're proceeding with. Other than that, if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. This is a note and file. So, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up to you.
Any questions? There are no questions. What's next?
Eligible list established.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the eligible lists have been established over this past month. Again, this is what occurs after the various recruitment and testing processes are done. We establish an eligibility list. This is somewhat of a busy month. We had 11 lists established, although most of these are promotional. And with promotions, we do tend to see smaller pools of candidate. So this month we had 9 promotional processes and 2 open. Included within this within this list is that open recruitment for the general manager for Glendale Water and Power. And as I've said in the past, even though this is an executive position, this is one that followed the civil service process. In that process, we had 77 applicants, and we ended up with a list of 2. Mr. Galanian will be interviewing those 2 and subsequently making an appointment. Other than that, this too is a note and file item, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Any questions?
No.
What's next?
Class specification for approval, planning series.
Mr. Ho?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, This is a revised specification for the planning series. And before I get into this, this looks like a really, really long job series, but it's a little misleading because it has the urban design planning series mixed in with the general planning series. So you see planning assistant, planning associate, and then you see planner, and you see its counterpart to planner is urban designer, and then there's senior planner, and then you have senior urban designer, then you have principal planner, and you have principal urban designer. So anyway, you have that urban design aspect blended in. What this particular revision is going to be focusing on is really the planning associate classification, and what I would say the introduction of some specialty areas that will help us when we go out to recruit at that particular level. And planning associate is a level where we do a lot of hiring. Planning assistant is definitely an entry level position. We'll take somebody right out of college and offer them an opportunity. But when we're looking for somebody with a little bit of background and specialty in some of these areas, such as mobility or historic preservation, it's usually at the planning associate that we start to see those specialties. So that's really the emphasis of this change right now. The rest of the changes over the course of this rather lengthy series involve adding boilerplate language and just making sure that the series is up to date with all the latest language that we normally put into them. This does require commission action, and if you have questions, we have staff here to answer those for you. Narek Petrosian worked on this with our community development department, and I believe Bradley Calvert, who is our assistant director, who's in charge of all the planning functions, is here to assist with any questions as well. Mr. Chair.
Anyone? Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Matt or Narek, each one of these has it's for one position, correct?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Astorian. These represent classifications, not necessarily positions. So there could be, I mean, if you look at the org chart that's attached, there are, several positions at the planning assistant level, and I believe it looks like about 7 planning associates. So if you use the term classification, each of these levels represent a specific defined classification. But there may be, various positions filled within that classification.
Very good. Bradley may be able to help me out here. When I chaired that commission, I was part of it for many, many years. I knew that there was a lot of demands put on the staff and the planners and so forth, and we were always short of people working in those positions. I know that the land use element for the city of Glendale is coming up, and I believe it needs to be completed by October or so. Would any hires on any one of these series be done before that to help the planning department or the community development department to go forward faster than it could?
Yes, good evening, Commissioner Astorian. Part of that goal is to be able to fill positions, one, to help us with those long-range initiatives. But the other part here, the classification, is to be able to have planners who can specialize in mobility and historic preservation, which would free up some of our existing planners who have to assist us in some of those realms. And it just adds to their overall body of work. Whatever number of vacancies we have, we would determine which one of those categories would be the best fit. And right now we do see, with an increased demand of historic preservation, a need to be able to fill that and free up some of the time of our current associate planners and let them focus more on processing entitlements and working on our long-range assignments.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Calvert. I appreciate you showing up to the meeting and answering the questions. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Commissioner Burley. Thank you. If I could, as I see the growth in the class specification itself from planning assistant to planning associate. And then I do see an emphasis. There are multiple areas, focus areas to include mobility, to include construction and development, if I can see this correctly. And then there's an area of interest to me, and that area is environmental quality. Now, I assume that the assistant position, since it does not require any significant knowledge specifically in the environmental arena, is a developmental position during which the individual planners will be mentored and tracked to various departments within community development. So again, looking at the environment and the focus area of environment, you have historical preservation, mobility division. I would assume that those people, there is in fact some sort of on-the-job training program so that a planning assistant will acquire the requisite knowledge, for instance, in environmental rules, regulations, in order to become or be assigned to the historic preservation division. Would that be the case?
That would be correct for an assistant and associate level position. At that level, they're not going to have the extensive knowledge of CEQA and environmental review. And through that on-the-job training and that kind of specialization or area of emphasis that they go into, that is their opportunity to learn that and advance, particularly with the historic preservation position, because that does deal significantly with environmental review, CEQA, and things of that nature. So they will be tracked to learn those elements. Typically, when someone starts achieving essentially the planner level is when they become a little more versed and experienced in environmental review. In fact, we have one of our planners who is actually tracking to become our future environmental review expert on staff.
All right, so help me on this one. You've introduced another term, and perhaps that is incorporated as well in this class specification. So we have a planning assistant, then we have a planning associate, and then at the top of that hierarchy, we have a planner. That's the third step in development.
The planner would be the mid-level position. So it starts with assistant and then moves to associate, which is the position we are looking to update the descriptions for here tonight. And then it moves up to planner, senior, and then ultimately principal.
And what are the tools and techniques that your office uses to develop, let's say, expertise in the individual planners or planning associates as you track them to mobility, as you track them to historic preservation, or you track them to, let's see, the third classification you have up there in terms of the planning division itself, which I assume is project development?
That typically comes from their project assignments and then who their supervisor is. Many of our supervisors specialize in a certain area. We do have a principal planner associated with historic preservation. So if we were to fill the historic preservation associate position, they would track underneath that supervisor. Therefore, that's where they would learn both the environmental review process associated with historic projects, as well as the historic district Mills Act process, historic designation, things of that nature.
Yeah, looking at that, of course, there is nothing, you answered my question previously. There's no such thing as an academic requirement. For instance, a course in environmental law and regulation, a course in the Historic Preservation Act as check boxes that must be checked before that planning assistant finds him or herself as a planning associate, and let's say the mobility division or historic preservation. It's really, as you said, learn by doing.
The updates of the description on the associate actually have very specific experiences that we would like to see them have. Take the mobility one, for example. They must have background in multimodal transportation, pedestrian and cyclist improvements, things of that nature. Historic preservation, we do ask for experience because associate is not an entry-level position. They are coming in with some professional experience, and we are asking that they do have some sort of background working with historic preservation. We don't have an educational requirement specific to historic preservation because that is a very niche education program. And there are many planners who obtain just a general planning degree and then become historic preservation experts throughout their course of their career.
Yeah, and my final question, however, is as somebody, and I would assume the position of planning assistant, and as my fellow commissioner indicated, there is a significant need to replenish our planning assistants. That individual is not required upon entry to have any of the more specific skills that you later identify, certainly for the planning associate.
No, and actually we don't have any vacancies right now for planning assistant. What we've actually determined is that skill level does not meet the needs and demands to work on the complex projects, especially right now of what we're facing. And that's why we are more focused on recruiting for a planning associate position so that we do have the necessary background and experience to be able to engage them in this work immediately.
Well, that, you open up one more question. So assuming that the planning assistant, does that mean that the planning assistant as part of this class specification no longer has relevancy? We're going to see it dropped?
No, it's just not a need right now. Right now, we have several vacancies related to planning associate, and this is where we saw that need that we needed to start essentially pocketing new staff into specializations. The assistant's not going away. It's just not a need for us at this moment. And those are the current vacancies we have to fill.
Now, so a planning associate is an open procurement, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it could go out across the county, across the state.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Carey, and I have one more question for Mr. Calvert.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Ms. Calvert, we recently have hired a sustainability official in the city of Glendale. Would any one of these positions, the 8 series that we have here, would any one of these series be used in order to help that official to do his job continuing on?
It would not be for the sustainability office. I will say that there are overlapping projects, obviously, and we do have several staff members currently that are well-versed in sustainability initiatives. And when needed, we do tap into them to assist on projects. Recently, you may have seen the ordinance to change to allow for beekeeping. That is something our staff has assisted with the sustainability office to bring that forward. So it's really on an as-need basis and what type of projects are occurring.
Very good. If there are no more questions, Mr. Chair, I'll be happy to move the item.
Anyone else, any questions? Hearing none, there's a motion by Commissioner Asturian. Any second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Mr. McCarty, second. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Astorian,
Yes.
Commissioner Haratunian,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley,
Yes.
Chair Carrion.
Yes, Mr. Calvert, thank you very much for your appearance today.
Thank you.
What's next?
Job bulletin for approval, senior civil engineer.
Mr. Doyle.
Chair Carrion, members of the commission, this is a job bulletin for approval for senior civil engineer in public works. And I make that distinction because we have a civil engineering series as well in our water and power department. This is a bulletin, not a specification. And I think I've gone over this a few times with the commission, but we do bring bulletins for your approval and consideration on a few circumstances. And in this case, this bulletin is coming before you because this position was previously recruited for on a promotional basis, and the department is now asking for it to be done on an open basis. As you can see, the position will be responsible for a lot of different distinct areas: land development, survey, GIS, automation, stormwater, wastewater, NPDES, a lot of different responsibilities at this managerial level. And we believe at this time there are no candidates internally who would meet all of these qualifications. Thus, we're seeking an open recruitment. as a result, if the commission does approve this, we'll open this bulletin relatively quickly, and hopefully get some good candidates externally from the outside. That's the substance of the item. If the commission has questions, be happy to try and answer those for you. I do want to say Ando Vardanian from my staff worked on this along with officials from the Public Works Department. And I believe we have Edward Hiddy, who is the Assistant Director for Public Works, with us today. So, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? I have, not hearing any, I have one quick question. Sometimes I wonder, why is there a 6-year experience, not a 5-year experience or a 10-year experience? Usually, I mean, an odd number like a 6 or 7 kind of confuses me. The only thing that I can think of is because you needed to have 3 years of supervisory experience, you gave it 6 years, so at least half of it would be supervisory. Am I correct, Mr. Hidi?
If I may comment on that, with all due my apology, I don't have the history why it was structured like that. However, what you just made make all the sense, because you need the professional engineer experience in that field, as well as this is as Mr. Dole touched on it. It's managerial position, supervisory position. Part of that experience to be a good manager, you need that engineering experience, but you need also a minimum really of 3 years supervising staff, training the staff. And that's a typical standard. You're right, usually you see 5, 10, 15, it could be a number, but I cannot see it less than 5. This 6th one here probably may have something to do with the regulation. There's a lot of regulation that falls into that position and may require more than just typical 5 years.
Mr. Dole, do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair, my thought would be that this is similar to that planning series. This is part of a rather extensive series of jobs, starting at the civil engineering assistant, associate civil engineer level, senior, and principal. It's almost just like the planning series. So as you go up in this series, we simply add years of experience to the necessary prerequisites. So I would imagine we landed on 6 because the one before it might have been 4 or 5, and the one above it is probably 7 or 8.
Got it. So looking at it in a vacuum, it just kind of looks weird at 6, but now that you explained it, that makes a lot of sense. Any other questions by any chance? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
McCarty approves. Any second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Asturian, second. Could we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Karian?
Yes. Nari, your voice is very low, so maybe you can speak a little bit louder. What's next?
Request to cancel open eligible list legal executive secretary.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this item is not something that comes up very often, although some of the more veteran members of the commission may remember this coming up historically. But in this case, we're dealing with a merged eligibility list for a position called legal executive secretary. And this list that's over a year old. In fact, because it's a merged list, there was one that was initially established July 1st of 2019, and then a second list, which was established May 6, 2020. So one of them is almost 2 years old. The second part of it is just reached 1 year. And again, we merged them because we have an obligation to each of our appointing authority departments to provide them with a minimum 3 qualified, eligible, available candidates. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve here. Between these 2 lists that have been merged, we've had a total of 5 names. And as you can see from the report, we pretty much exhausted the available names on this list. We had one individual who was hired. We had one individual who was offered the job but declined. We had one individual who waived their opportunity to interview. One interviewee who had issues with a reference check, and then there's one that was interviewed but not selected. So we really have, of the 5, just one remaining eligible person. As I said earlier, under our rules, we are obligated to provide the appointing authority with a minimum of 3 names, and that's just the case that we're in right now. So what we're recommending, due to the age of this list, that we'd like to start over and pretty much see what's out there in today's labor market, sort of get a fresh start on it. One thing I'll add, in the time that since we originally did this recruitment process, certainly back in 2019 and in 2020, we did make some changes to the minimum qualifications, specifically relating to the typing requirement. And I think the commission has been aware over the past year, we've been re-examining those typing speed requirements, just how necessary they actually are. And I know when we did this recruitment both times in the past, we had some really stellar looking candidates on paper. They had great resumes, great background, certifications, but we'd bring them in to take a typing test, and they couldn't pass. And so, and at the time, we had a 60 word per minute typing requirement. And believe it or not, the majority of the candidates weren't able to do that. So it left us with a very small number at the end. So we have since brought this item to the commission, the specification, and reduced that to 40 words per minute. So we anticipate perhaps a different outcome this time, and probably a larger candidate pool, certainly through the various steps of this process, and hopefully, given the way the labor market is today, the opportunity to hire some really good candidates. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it in your hands. I do have Narc Petrosian worked on this item, and from the City Attorney's Office, we have Mr. City Attorney Mike Garcia and Ms. Ann Maurer, who's the Chief Assistant City Attorney, who worked with us on this. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Before I ask it for any questions, I just wanted to clarify one thing, Matt. We had a list of 5 people that were provided to the City Attorney's Office, correct? And due to some circumstances, we are kind of down to 1, which we interviewed and we decided not to hire. But the list of 3 was fulfilled at that time, correct?
Chair Karen, yes, the list of 3 was fulfilled at all times, but as you can see, at various times, we've had people decline job offers or waive.
I understand that. I understand. I'm just saying that initially we had, when the list was prepared, the list was a completed list and was provided. And then for some circumstances, the list was wind down to just 1 person. And now, because of before 24 months, you're asking us to cancel that list.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure that's understood. Any questions by any of the commissioners? Hearing none, we took Mr. Garcia, Ms. Maurer's time, but it seems like there are no questions. So everyone is okay. So can we have a motion to approve, please?
I'll move to approve.
Mr. Hartunian moves. Any second?
I'll second it.
Mr. McCarthy seconds. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Astorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarley?
Yes.
Chair Karian?
Yes. Mr. Garcia, Ms. Maurer, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Petrosian, what's next?
Reports?
Mr. Petrosian. Mr. Doyle.
Chair Karian, the only report I have is our monthly late performance evaluation report. As you can see, once again, a really good job by all of our city departments. We only have one that has a couple of late evaluations. The rest of the departments are all up to date, and in good shape. So with that, this is just for a note and file item. I'll throw it back to you, sir.
Okay, the only department that had one late first notice is community service and parks. Everyone else has had no first past evaluation, which is very nice to see. I'm sorry, Mr. Petrosian, what's next?
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Any comments by anyone? I would like to make a comment or a suggestion, please. Our respective city council members have appointed us as civil service commissioners, and we have taken an oath that we will serve our respective, position. And we have a preset meetings of second Wednesday at 5 o'clock of each month. I know things come up, Mr. Gazarian had something that came up last minute, which caused us to not have, but I was in a panic today because I wasn't sure if we were gonna have a quorum today or not. I would ask, please, that a Friday before, when Mr. Petrosian, I asked Mr. Petrosian, you need to keep in touch until 5 o'clock on Friday. We need to know how many people we're going to have by Wednesday. And please, everyone, if you can respond accordingly, just so we know if you have a quorum or not, because if we don't have a quorum, then we can't have a meeting. So I would appreciate, first of all, if you can set aside second Wednesday at 5 o'clock aside from your calendars, because that's what we committed to do. And then if you can, if Mr. Petrosian could do us a favor, and a Friday before, if you can just track us down individually and get a okay, yay or nay for Wednesday, I would appreciate it. Mr. Doyle maybe could make sure that that's done the week before. This way, we're not in a panic last minute to try to make sure that everyone is going to be at the meeting. And the last thing I wanted to say was, it seems like on June 15th, we're going to basically have the governor move us to a different tier or take some restrictions away. I think by July meeting, not June meeting, by July meeting, we should have in-person meetings at the city council chambers. So not in June, but in July, I think would be probably our first in-person meeting with, of course, with safe distances and everything else. So I would ask Mr. Doyle, and I've discussed this with Mr. Doyle previously, on second Wednesday in July, if we decide that we're going to hold a meeting in July, if there are no vacations or anything else, we would have an in-person meeting. And if it turns out that we're not going to have a meeting in July, then we will hold in-person meetings either in July or in August, depending on which date works best. Mr. Doyle, if you have any comments, or if you have any concerns or anything you would like to say, you can say it now.
Thank you, Mr. Karian, Mr. Chair. I have had a conversation with the city manager on this, and his view is that that's very, very possible that by July we'll be ready to resume live meetings. As you had indicated, June 15th appears to be the point at which things will beginning to reopen, including hopefully City Hall, because we're still not open unless there's an appointment only. But we anticipate that realistically July would be something that would enable us to resume live meetings. And I will add that the City Council in the last month and a half has begun meeting in person more and more. They still have people calling in and staff members and others, and occasionally a council member will come in remotely through WebEx. But I believe the last 3-4 weeks, at least for the night meetings, they have been here in person. So I see no reason why we wouldn't be able to do that with civil service.
Perfect. Looking forward to having in-person meetings with all the esteemed commissioners in July, and we'll have our June meeting, and we'll decide if there will be a July meeting if necessary. With
Commissioner,
comments?
I'm sorry, Chair Parian,
Yes.
may I ask a question? Are these meetings, in-person meetings, are going to be 100% in person, or there is going to be a hybrid factor to it as well? While I enjoy visiting everybody in person as as anybody else, I also have grown accustomed to the efficacy, the efficiency of Zoom meetings, because it allows me to do a whole lot more throughout the day, albeit it blurs the borders of your personal life and everything else. But I'm just wondering um, if this would be a proposed hybrid that a commissioner may wish to attend via digitally, or it is going to be absolutely in person. It's a question that I have.
So assuming if I have my say, and I guess we can take a vote on this, but if I have my say, we're chosen to basically do this. We're told that we're supposed to set aside a time for us to do this. And my preference would be that not to go through technical issues of what it would take to do a hybrid one. For us to just appear, have one camera on all of us, and have just the IT guys not to go through trying to do a hybrid one. With that, I would say that in the July meeting would be in person, and we won't have a hybrid way of actually contacting. Unless the majority decide, no, we would like to be able to just Zoom in. I would like to see everyone in person in July. Hearing no other comments, I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, not hearing anything else. We'll discuss that again in June, I guess, Mr. Historian, if you don't mind. Maybe there'll be some other, Mr. Gazarian might have some other comments.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Varpetian I did not anticipate having this discussion to where we would seek any consensus on this, because it wasn't Brown acted. But is this something you would like to have on the agenda to discuss, or is that appropriate? I'll ask the city attorney or the chair.
Mr. Doyle, I think it would be appropriate to defer the discussion to a later time until we've had an opportunity to see whether or not that would be a permissible option that the council would direct. I don't think we're at a place where we've had those discussions just yet. So yeah, it's not on, we can't seek consensus here, and I don't know that it's something that could be done by consensus at a commission level anyway. So we'd probably have to wait for further direction from council on that.
Mr. Doyle, why don't we put this on the agenda for next time, just so we can at least talk about it. And then at that point, of course, we don't have the discretion to do that if the city council doesn't set aside the overtime and all the rest of the stuff for the staff to be there to have dual staffing. So if you're not basically told no, in person it is, then everyone needs to be in person. If they say no, there's a possibility of dual, then we can discuss that. But let's defer that to next time. I wanted to just bring it up, and that's why I didn't say starting June. I said starting July. So in the June meeting, we can discuss it. Is that a yes, Mr. Doyle?
I think that the chair has that discretion, Chairman, that you can make that as an agenda item.
Okay, so I'm making it as an agenda item to discuss, Mr. Doyle. And the direction of, could we as a commission request to have that, or is that going to be additional funds which we don't have in our budget? So if everyone needs to be there, one camera, one thing, I prefer that anyway. So we'll see what the direction is from the city council.
Very well, thank you.
If I may add, the WebEx or the Zoom, otherwise, is a platform that can be shared without, I believe, any more technical issues like a cameraman or additional staff
But Mr. Story, he still needs to be in the city count, in the city TV and all that. And so it would take staffing for that migration to happen. That's the only thing.
I agree.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Okay. What's next?
Adjournment.
Anyone moving to adjourn? Here's Mr. McCarty moves to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. We'll see
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.